program. My name is Emiliana Rodriguez, and I will be facilitating this webinar for you that, as you know, is hosted by many organizations, starting by the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard, in particular, the evidence-based parenting for flourishing families. We have also Research Schools International, Made for Joy, the University of Navarra, UNIR, University, the Character Project, and Fundación Azteca. So thank you all for joining us. As you know, also this second webinar is part of this bigger program that really is looking for empowering parents to develop the dispositions and skills to bring patience, serenity, and joy to your parenting, to promote positive family climate, healthy relationships at the foundation, and to support patience, serenity, joy, flourishing, and loving relationships in yourself and your children. And also, this is part of assessment project. So as you also know, we're running this randomized controlled study leading by the Flourishing Program at Harvard. So that's why we ask you at the beginning for a survey, and then we will give at the end of this webinar today, we will give some new updates about the research and the surveys that we will be applying. But let's begin directly with a little bit of remembering what we saw this first unit. You completed already a month of the program. Most of you completed already 8 lessons of the program. Some of you might be on the way of completing. Some of you maybe have trouble to actually accessing the lessons we have very busy lives, we know, as parents. So we're also going to provide you with some extra resources so that you can catch up with this unit 1. But for those who were able to make some lessons in the unit 1, I would love if you could share in the chat or in the questions and answers of this webinar, what are the main lessons that you got from this unit 1? If you have some lessons, something that you learned that you would like to share, please tell us in the webinar chat. That I hope it's open for you. Otherwise, please tell us in the questions and answers chat. And while you share what you learned during this unit, I wanted to share some of the comments that we received through the different lessons that we have been doing. So first, around the syllabus, this first unit focused on the ingredients for flourishing as a family, and it was very focused on ourselves as parents. So what's our vision for parenting, our goals, the key virtues and mindsets for parenting, and how important it is to be sure of what, to develop self-knowledge, of self-awareness, because our children are learning from what we do instead of what we tell them to do, for example, and also the importance of caring for ourselves, to actually teach from well-being or caring for our children from well-being. So some of these were the main topics that we were working during this last month. And these are some of the reflections, learnings that some of the participants shared with us. And I'm reading here in the questions and answers that being intentional about our vision and goals. Yes, this is the main part of transitioning from a passive parenting way to an active or conscious way of parenting. So yeah, thank you so much. Also serenity, take a breath, pause before speaking, in tense situations especially. So yes, thank you so much for that comment. And I think that we find some of these topics also in this slide about the learnings that some of you shared with us during the lessons. So for example, the importance of explaining to our children why we ask them to do certain things, to collaborate to find solutions, to be more mindful of how we react, and to model the behavior. Also to be more conscious of my actions, to take a moment to pause and not to react. So yes, those were some of the main topics. And well, some of you, I hope that you continue sharing some of your learnings. I wanted also to share with you this piece of inspiration, really, which was shared by one of our participants from Mexico. So she sent a message where she was telling us that she thought that we have some kind of cameras in her house because we were catching up with all the conflicts that she was having at home. And that she was learning so many things that she actually had a special workbook for this. So I just want to share with you the video that she sent of all the notes that she's taking, all the learnings, how she's moving through the program, and not only taking notes about the content, but also about her own learnings, reflections, how is she applying this at home. So I hope that this serves you a little bit of inspiration, because as you know, the program, we send a couple of lessons of a week. They come with some videos, with some short contents, but also with exercises for us to reflect. And it's very helpful if you can write them down, either in a workbook or in your own cell phone or somewhere, because the process of writing and that works with other parts of our brain that allows us to integrate better the information. So this is a suggestion to take that greater advantage of the program. And now what's coming with Unit 2? So Unit 2, it's very interesting because it's around emotions. So it's how do we overcome emotional challenges in our parenting practices. And so many of you also told us or asked us about specific things that you could do or practice with your children. So Unit 1 was very focused on us as adults, of clarifying our vision or clarifying our way, the way that we are parenting, and what do we want to become as parents, as a family, the importance and how can we integrate some self-care practices in our lives. So it was very focused on us. And now this unit is is going to work along the challenges that we're having at home. Of course, to develop first more awareness for us about emotions, to provide us with some very practical and evidence-based techniques to manage emotions, but also with more advice precisely to how to apply this in our families and with our children. So this is something that we will be working on, this Unit 2 that you are starting basically today with this webinar, and that you are going to start receiving the lessons next week. So this second unit is also going to have 8 lessons. It's about overcoming emotional challenges. We will be working on emotional regulation, on cultivating patience to face parenting challenges, turning challenges into opportunities, and promoting actively joy in our parenting practices. And to give you a context of the program, I want to start with a little challenge for you. So please take a moment to grab a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen or somewhere that you can write down things. Because what's coming next in this challenge is that for 1 minute that I'm gonna be counting here in my phone, for 1 minute, I will ask you to write as many emotions and feelings as you can. So think about all the emotions and feelings that come to your mind and write them down. Actually, it would be very good also if you could share them with us in the chat. I think that the chat is open to everyone now. Yes. So the chat is open, so you can write directly in the chat, for example, this list of emotions and feelings. The more you can do in 1 minute, okay? So we will start at the count of 3. Give me a second to set up my chronometer. Okay, so at the count of 3, please make this list of as many emotions and feelings as you can think. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and we'll start. 1 minute. You have 20 more seconds to keep writing. And once you finish, please share with me your list, if possible. Okay, 3, 2, 1, stop. Okay, so I see many lists here. Scared, happy, concerned, angry, frustrated, curious, anxious, joyful, serene, disadvantaged, abused, lonely, peaceful. Thank you. Also, anger, disappointment, sad, happy, confused, worried, anxious, giddy, excited, fearful, elated, calm, stressed, excited. Now, as I continue reading, please help me counting down how many emotions and feelings you listed. So for example, I see here Alice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Oh, I lost the counting. But if you can please also share in the chat how many emotions and feelings you listed, please help me with that. I'll continue reading some of the ones that you listed here: disgust, jealous, envy, boredom, shy, secure base, frustrated, anger, sadness, shocked, excited, joy, depression, happiness, sadness, foolishness, shame, honor, flatness, boredom, excitement. So about numbers: 14, 12, 12, 15, 5, 8, 13. Okay, wow. So far we have Anjana with 15 in this um, in this little challenge that I asked you. Thank you. I think Anjana got the longest list. And this is a very important exercise because there has been some research, for example, in United States, about how many emotions people usually express and actually know. And the number is just 3. So it's basically like I'm happy, I'm pissed, and I'm sad, things like that. So the fact that we at least are using more and can think about more words to describe our feelings and emotions is very important, because naming emotions is the first step to managing emotions. And we have many, many more words to express emotions and feelings. Here's a resource that is coming from Yale University. It's called the Mood Meter. So here's also a list of some of the emotions, and we can find definitely more, right? There's another resource that's very helpful that is called the Atlas of Emotions, developed by Paul Ekman. You can find it in internet. It's for free, where you will learn that, for example, there are many emotions in the family of anger. For example, I can be enraged, or I can be frustrated, or just angry, and it's not the same, right? And usually when someone asks us, how are you? What do we say? Usually we just say, oh, fine, for example, right? And then we want to connect with our children, with our adolescents, teenagers, and we want them really to explain us, to tell us about their emotions. But it's very difficult also if they don't have the example of actually using this richness of words to express what we feel. So to become more aware of our emotions is our first step for managing emotions better, and also to model that to our children. And the ability to express more with more clarity emotions, it's very, very important. So that's the first thing that I want you to encourage, is to start using more emotional vocabulary, so that instead of just saying I'm fine, that we can, for example, tell our children how was our day, using different emotions that we might have felt as a way to model them this emotional awareness and emotional vocabulary, and that they can start also communicating with us through um, um, through the richness of emotions that we actually can feel and can express to others. So we already listed many emotions, right? But what are emotions? So, for example, if your child asks you, what's an emotion? What would be your answer? Please also share in the chat your answers. How would you describe or define emotions? I've been asking these questions of what are emotions to very diverse groups of people. Yesterday we had a big group, for example, and I was asking them, what are emotions? And many people answer, for example, emotions are what we feel. Yes. So for example, here, how one feels, a feeling that points toward how you are doing inside. Yes, expressing how you feel inside, feelings. So definitely feelings, right? So emotions are something that we are feeling and we feel it in our body, right? So that's a very important part of emotions, that's for sure. And it's coming from inside, as Brenda is writing, pointing out to us. So a feeling that is not intentional, that may be drive, in reaction to a stimulus, usually unconscious. Thank you, Valda. Yes. Also, it has to do with a reaction, right? With a stimulus. And many times we don't even know what that stimulus is. And that stimulus can come from the outside, something that is happening around me, but it can come from the inside, maybe because I'm hungry or because I remember something that triggered that reaction. So yeah. And Corinne says, what is what makes us alive, right? And it's something also that it's very characteristic for us as humans. And your feelings expressed in your body. So yes, that's all true. But I want to expand our definition of emotion. So first of all, it's important to tell you that there's not like one definition of emotion that every researcher agrees on. So different researchers might have different definitions of emotions. But I want to share this one by Dr. Paul Ekman. He was one of the um, main researchers on the topic of emotions. He traveled around the world looking for universal emotions. So looking if, for example, we humans had a set of emotions that we express in the same way, independently of our country. That, for example, if Japanese and Mexicans would be expressing some emotions in the same way. And he discovered that actually there were some universal emotions that we universally express in the same way with our faces. But also he has this definition of emotion that I think that it's very insightful, because first he recognizes that emotions are processes. So that means that emotions are something that happens in the time and that have many parts or aspects. And they are triggered when we feel that something important is happening to us. So as you were saying, it's actually a reaction, right? Something happens and that we perceive that it's important for our survival or well-being, and that trigger all the process of emotion. So this process has three parts, and I want you to remember that. That is very important because we are very conscious about the physical aspect of emotions. Emotions are felt, right? And when we feel, for example, sadness, we have this knot in our throats, or when we feel anger, we have this tension in the forehead and in the mouth, and our heart rate might increase. So we have all these physiological responses associated with emotions that we detect and that we feel in our bodies. But that's not the only part of an emotional process. We also have psychological effects. So emotions come with a lens that make us perceive reality in a very particular way. For example, when we are angry, we have the tendency to focus on the negative things around the situation of the person who made us angry. So if we get angry with our friend, then we remember all the times that this friend was not there for us, or the moment when we were very young and she stole our boyfriend from that party, or you know, you remember everything that is bad and that actually fuels the anger. Aaron Beck, who was the father of the cognitive therapy, he said that 90% of the way that we perceive the world when we are angry is biased, right? So emotions come with a lens, with a psychological effect, with audio, with video, right? With images that come to our mind. And then they influence our behavior. Actually, emotion, the word, comes from the Latin emovere, and emovere means to put in movement. So emotions, when they're triggered, also influence our conduct or our behavior. So that's why it's so important to know about emotions, because they have this physiological, psychological, and behavioral effect on us, right? So um, emotions also, are they good or are they bad? Do you think that there are good or bad emotions? That is something important, right? Because, for example, I just told you that anger can be harmful sometimes, right? If we don't manage our anger, they can bias our way to perceive things, to perceive it very negatively, and then might react with aggression. But actually, something that we know is that emotions are not good or bad. Emotions are there because are part of evolution. They help us to survive, and but they can be, depending on the context and depending of how we deal with them, they can be constructive or destructive. For example, anger, as you said, Brenda, a bit of both, right? If I get angry because I see an injustice, and that anger allows me to act, to become more just, or to help someone who is being abused, or to end that injustice, then it might be a very constructive anger, right? But if anger it's triggering me to behave in a very aggressive way towards my child, for example, then it might be destructive. So emotions, all emotions are there to help us. Fear help us to survive, right? It might not, but also when it's destructive, it can freeze us and don't allow us to, for example, overcome a challenge. So that's why we prefer to talk about constructive and destructive. And it's not that an emotion is completely destructive. It depends on the context. In the best depends on if it's allowing me to see a situation with more clarity, or on the contrary, if the emotion is creating some biases in my way of understanding a situation. So that is very important to understand, that all emotions have a reason to be there. But in order to be able to take the constructive aspect of emotions and to work with the destructive aspect of emotions, the first step, as I mentioned, starts with recognizing emotions and naming emotions. Because if we name it, we can bring more clarity and attention to them. So I would ask you to pay more attention to the question, how do you feel? And to ask this to yourself and to answer it more clearly each time. If we name it, we can begin to regulate it, and we can begin to observe it and evaluate it. So this is the first step, increasing our emotional awareness and our emotional vocabulary, as we mentioned before. But then what does it mean to manage emotion? As I mentioned, when we are under strong emotion, especially, we are with these lenses. So we see the world, we read the world through our emotions. So to start regulating our emotions first is to recognize that we have this lens, and then to actually be able to change this lens in a way that allows us to see the world with a more objective and more kind, if possible, way, so that kinder and more objective way to interpret or to perceive reality is what drives our behavior. And for this, I want to explain a little bit of how emotions work in the brain. So here we have, oh, no, not this yet. Sorry, this one. So we have here a model of the brain. And here what is important is that when we imagine that we see a dog that it's coming towards us, and this dog is barking and it looks kind of scary, right? So imagine this dog coming to you. So the first part of the brain that actually evaluates the situation, it's the limbic system, where we have this structure that's called the amygdala. You can see the amygdala in this slide. So the amygdala sees something that is threatening, and it says like, oh, there's a problem. There's a dog coming. But then the information is also evaluated by the prefrontal cortex. This prefrontal cortex is a part of our brain that is more advanced, that is very characteristic of human beings, and that allows us to analyze a situation, to take perspective, that it's very related to our memory, to our capacity to see many, to create possible solutions, is the more rational part of our brain, right? So if the prefrontal cortex evaluates the situation and says, yes, there's a dog barking at me, but it's actually tied with a rope. So it sends again a signal to the amygdala, to the limbic system, to calm down, because then the evaluation is that we are safe. This dog is barking, but it's not going to bite us, right? So this is a process of regulation. But if the prefrontal cortex evaluates and sees, uh-oh, this dog, it's barking and is not, and it's actually running towards me, and it has even something, in the mouth that it doesn't look good, then the signal that it sends to the limbic system and to the amygdala is that we are in trouble. And then we activate our survival mode. And I'm making this with my hand. I'm opening the hand because when we are in a survival mode, there are neurotransmitters in the brain that actually prevent prevent our prefrontal cortex to start making a lot of reasoning, and gives the power of decision to the amygdala, right? Because in that moment, it doesn't help us to be overthinking things. We need to react very fast to survive. So when the amygdala takes power, amygdala only knows to do three things: either attack, freeze, or run away, right? So when the amygdala is in power, that's what we do. We respond either attacking or freezing or running away from the situation. And the problem is that the survival mode doesn't only activates when we are in the face of something like really potentially harmful as a dog coming to bite us, but it activates in the face of strong emotions that can be activated only sometimes even for our thoughts. So something very important is that in order to calm down, to regulate, to have access again to our more advanced part of our brain, to our prefrontal cortex, to be able to manage a situation with perspective, with reasoning, we need to again create a connection between these two systems, between the prefrontal cortex that can think more broadly and the amygdala, right? And to do that, we need to calm down. But something very important to know is that this prefrontal cortex, that it's so essential for making conscious, wiser decisions, it's just developing in the adolescent brain. It doesn't finish to mature until we are around 20 something. So in our teens, basically this part of the brain is developing. And that's why teenagers are way more reactive than adults. And for teenagers, it's harder sometimes to calm down. Emotions sometimes can be like very big, and they can be really overcome or kidnapped by the emotions. One great example of this is the movie Inside Out, especially Inside Out 2, when Rayleigh, that it's the main character, it's transitioning to adolescence, right? So I want to show you a little clip of this movie on how emotions in adolescence works. Wait a second, is here. Just 1 minute and a half.
We'll be back. Come on,
Riley, you aren't packed yet?
You're always on me! Can't you just lay off for like 1 second?
Overreact much?
I barely touched it. Those morons broke the console.
Riley, what's wrong?
Oh, Mom looks sad.
I'm the worst!
Oh no, honey.
I barely touched it.
That's what I said.
Let the professional handle this.
I'm too gross to go to camp or anywhere ever again!
Oh yeah, this is totally broken.
Well, we all knew this day would come.
Remember, we agreed not to make a big deal about this.
But she really does stink.
Oh, it's bad.
Remain calm. Stick to the prepared script. You are not gross, honey. You're just changing. Remember that beautiful butterfly we saw in the park last week? Well, that butterfly began. Easy. Questions?
Gosh, Mom, just go away! Oh!
Well, that's a preview of the next 10 years.
So someone identifies with this movie. Some adolescents can be like Rayleigh, where emotions like really are overflowed, but some others might express it internally. So that's something also to take a look about, because not everyone expresses their emotions with yelling or with these big movements, but that doesn't imply that they are not actually feeling it, right? Because the adolescent brain also, it's maturing its prefrontal cortex, and it's going through very different and strong processes. It's full of hormones, as you saw also in this little clip, and it's also in a moment of we call it neural pruning. So what's happening is that some of the connections that were established when they were children, they are now they are losing some of these connections to make newer connections. So there's a moment of a lot of neuroplasticity, many changes happening in their brain. So that is why when we're talking about emotions in adolescence, something very important is that we as parents try to stay calm and to be like a safe space for them to express their emotions, that they see and can learn techniques to manage their emotions, but knowing that the process is going to take time, and that's why we need patience also. Again, this virtue of patience, because we need in a way to lend them our prefrontal cortex so that they are able to regulate themselves. And the problem begins when they are like this, right? So this is like one image of the movie where their brain is taken over by one emotion. In this case, is anxiety. So they are in that state, and we are in this state, so that we are also overcome by stress, for example, that we have so many challenges, so many things to do at home, and that we ourselves are engaged in an emotional process. And what happens then, that instead of being handling the situations with our prefrontal cortex that knows a lot of things, we're handling the situation in a survival mode. So what happens that we either start fighting or someone just decides to leave the situation, to shut the door. And many times that can break the connection with our children. And yes, so thank you that you're finding helpful the teaching on the prefrontal cortex. And yes, so this is something that can happen very easily for us. So what can we do? Here's diagram of how emotions work. For example, anger. So imagine that you have intense anger at your office because others make a decision without consulting you. So what happened in that moment of anger? There are bodily sensations, as we mentioned. So there's something physical going on, but there are also these thoughts that's coming to our minds. They always exclude me. They are not considering me. And then our mind is all messed up. We're not thinking clearly. And then we just react. Our response is very instinctive, can be very without even not conscious, and we might treat others with aggression, for example. So that's one like normal, non-regulated episode of anger. But what can we do? We learned in the last webinar, and we continue, we'll share some other practices with you in this second unit to be able to break this cycle before the reaction. So emotional awareness will allow you to start noticing when you're feeling strong emotions. For example, when you're getting angry. So the idea is that you will start noticing, for example, like, oh, I start feeling the situation, this emotion in my body. And then you notice your thoughts, how your thoughts are starting to become like this, like, oh, they always excluded me, like she never listens to me, she always do the same in the house. I told them 1,000 times already and she never listens. So you notice these thoughts, and instead of reacting, you take some time to calm the mind down, to be able to connect again with your prefrontal cortex so that you can make a conscious and kinder, more effective response. Because what happens with our children and with adolescents usually is that they do something that can be harmful or destructive for them, or that is just not respectful for the way that the family works. So if we become angry and we engage in this fight with them, it's very hard for them to listen to us because they are trapped in their own emotion. They cannot learn in that moment because they cannot even access their prefrontal cortex. So when we engage in this kind of fights, what we want them is to actually understand. We want them to change. We want them to learn, but it's impossible because the brain, when it's overcome by the emotions, cannot learn. So that's why it's so important that we first are able to calm ourselves down, to become this like a space where we can co-regulate together. And when our children is calmed down, then the teaching can come in. Then we can discuss something. Then we can come together to a conclusion. Then she or he will be able to actually listen to what we want to say, to see the consequences of their behavior. But when they are in the middle of emotion, it's very difficult. And if we are also in the middle of emotion, it's very difficult to connect and to communicate actually with them. So that's why this is a very powerful exercise that we will continue using and studying deeper in this unit too. For example, focusing on our breath for at least 3 breaths. So I invite you to do it now. Just wherever you are, sit for a moment, and let's make 3 deep breaths together. So let's make an in-breath, and exhale now. Breathe in again. Exhale. Breathe in. and exhale. Sometimes just 3 breaths can make the trick to allow our mind to calm down, to our thoughts to become clearer, to our body to regulate, and then to have a response that is more conscious, that it's kinder. And I want to share with you this quote by Viktor Frankl that says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So we can create and we can expand these pauses, these spaces, by breathing consciously, as we just did now. So that's a very powerful strategy that we will be using and sharing in this new unit of our program. And once we calm down, then we will share with you many practices to help co-regulate emotions with your child. So strategies to very practically model patience and serenity, to be able to connect with them before you correct a behavior. That is very important. We see a behavior that is harmful, and we want to make the correction right away. But sometimes if we do it in a way that they perceive as aggressive, or that they perceive that is not caring, or that they don't understand, it's very hard for them to understand it. So we connect before correcting, and we will share with you some practical strategies for that. Also, we know that when we are talking about creating emotional awareness and managing emotions, this is not something that is learned in one day. So actually, many times, for example, our emotions will overcome us. We will react with anger or with any other emotion. We can break connection with our child, and they also will do the same, right? Sometimes we can be very calm and very loving and trying to connect, and they will be overpowered by the emotions. So another important topic that we will be sharing in these lessons is how to forgive and repair when we are overcome by our emotions or react in a way that is harmful, either for your children or our children for us. And also some techniques to actively celebrate and give thanks, because that, we know by science also, is a very efficient and beautiful way to cultivate joy in parenting. So we not only manage destructive emotions, but we will also give some strategies to actively cultivate joy in our interactions with our children. So this is something that we will be working in the next lessons with you. And before we leave in these few minutes that we have still, I wanted to share a couple of more strategy or more tools that we will see deeper in the lessons, but that I can share with you now, and you can start right away applying it at home. So the first one is about the importance of connecting before correcting a behavior with our children. So for this is empathic listening. This is a very powerful technique, because what happens many times is that our child comes and they tell us something, and we might be, for example, in the middle of something or just thinking of many things, and they can feel that we are not listening to them. And sometimes we are actually not listening to them, right? Because constantly our mind is overtaken by this. Do you remember the monkey of the mind? This little monkey that is constantly distracted, that is thinking about the future, that is thinking about the past, and that it's hard sometimes to concentrate and focus on what's going on in the present. So empathic listening is about the first step to make this big effort and to make a practice of actually being present with our child, to listen to them. So, and try to do it with no interruptions. So you can try that today, for example. It can be only for 5 minutes, but try to ask a question to them and to be completely present. Put your cell phone down and just be present with them, and try to not interrupt. If you can, if they are not showing a lot, of course, you can make more questions so that they are open to talk. But the idea is that not interrupting, trying to really understand what is being said. And for that, you can make more follow-up questions, or you can paraphrase what they just tell you. And something very important is to validate their emotions, right? Because they are going through many changes. Their emotions are way more explosive than our emotions. So, for example, something that for us doesn't have a lot of power, and we would say, like, oh, don't worry, that's not important. For them, it's very important, and their emotions can be very big. So something very important for empathic listening is to actually validate emotions, to say like, okay, I can understand how you feel. Maybe I felt in a similar way in this or that situation. So really try to ask them, how are they feeling, to validate that instead of questioning, judging, and instead of giving solutions, which is something that we parents, we always want to give them solutions, right? We want them to, yeah, to do better, to be good. So when they tell us something, sometimes we just want to tell them, oh, well, you can do this or you can do that. Have you thought about this? So empathic listening is make this effort to just listen, to create a space for them. So this is the first tool that I wanted to share and that I invite you to start practicing if you can today with your child, but also with other people in your family, even in your workplace. It's a very, very powerful tool. You will see. And you can, for example, tell yourself every day, I'm going to practice empathic listening at this time with this person. And then the next day, you choose another person and you practice it again. So in this way, it doesn't become like something impossible to be, but you set times to actually practice it, and it becomes a habit, and it will become later a part of the way that you actually listen to people. And the final exercise to share with you today, it's about gratitude. So please help me with this exercise, sharing it with us in the chat. And the first part is to write 3 things that for which you feel grateful. These are not huge things. That's are little things that can happen. For example, maybe they happened to today or yesterday. It can be something as simple as noticing that somebody helped you, that you saw or you shared a nice laugh with your child, anything. But write 3 things for which you feel grateful. And please share it with us in the chat. I will wait to read you. And as you think and as you write down, what are those 3 things that you feel grateful for? Also notice what happens with your emotions when you're thinking about this. So the sun is shining. Yes. The daffodils are blooming, beautiful. And my daughter is spring cleaning. Yes. 3 great things: my child, my home, my family and friends. Yes. My husband help, my son's cuddles, being healthy. Yes. Very important things to feel grateful for. Sunshine today, children, the cats. Blessed to have children. I was able to offload my stress with my best friend. I was able to see my son learn his lines for his school play after many weeks of learning. So proud. Having time to chat with my friend today. Spring, my children, definitely. So it can be very, very simple things, right? But as Catherine is also commenting here, oh well, she's commenting more on what Brenda was telling us of the realizing that sometimes we're not actually listening to our child. But what is very powerful here about gratitude is that it's just a process of becoming aware of something that is already here, right? And there's a lot of research around the benefits of gratitude. So when we become grateful, for example, that has a positive impact even in our health, in our relationships, and how you feel when you are um, thinking about all the things that you are feeling grateful about. Like for me, I'm pretty sure that when I shift my lens towards gratitude, I just start feeling with more resources and more calm, more happy, right? So um, these are beautiful. Yes, I agree that this is beautiful what you're sharing. Thank you so much. My daughter, that did her homework. I didn't have to get up early today. Awesome. My husband took kids for shopping. Awesome. Yes. So very simple practices that we will continue working on during this month of lessons. So this is something that you can start. For example, you can have a routine. So before going to bed, thinking about 3 things that you feel grateful about this day, that day, and even also focusing more about feeling grateful about things that happen between in your family, to express that to your child, to your partner. So that has a very powerful effect in ourselves and relationships. So I definitely encourage you to practice gratitude, and this is something that we will be working more during this month of lessons. So what's next? So we will continue sharing with you the lessons on Tuesdays and Thursdays, right? But we also have a special invitation. We know that some of you haven't been able to finish the lessons of Unit 1, or that, basically that maybe even there's some people that hasn't been able to even start the lessons of Unit 1. So we want to extend this special invitation. We will invite you to a Unit 1 workshop where you can catch up. So the idea is that in this workshop, we're going to go over the lessons and work with them together, so that in 1 hour we can complete the lessons and catch up and continue with Unit 2 without problems, right? So this we will share with you all the details by email and by WhatsApp, but we hope to see you there if you need to catch up. And of course, you can come if you want to recap. You are also welcome to come. We will also be preparing a special resource for you that we will share also later. And something very important is that for research, our next survey is going to be on the week of April 5 to 12. So that's something new. It's a little change in the calendar. And this will be the last required questionnaire for this program, right? So this is a little shift. We're going to have this week of April to apply the survey. And then we will continue with the program. We will continue sharing the lessons. We will continue with the next webinar about closing up Unit 2 and starting Unit 3, as we have planned and as we have shared in previous webinars and in the calendar. So this is the only changes. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to comment here. We still have 3 more minutes. If you have any questions, any comments about the program, we would love to hear about you. I'm reading also the questions and answers in case there's something over there. Let me open. And yes, Sophie is asking if the past lessons stay available to watch once we start the next unit. Yes, they will be available, and we will have, in addition to that, this catch-up seminar to help you catch up with the lessons and then continue with the Unit 2. So yes. So I will share with you here also the calendar. So these are all the this is all what is happening. You can access to the calendar also through this link. We can share the link with you in the chat, and we will be sharing also this calendar with you in the communication through WhatsApp and through email. So you know everything that is coming and all the changes, well, the little changes that we are making about the survey date, the dates of the survey, and also the invitation for this workshop to catch up. And to close the session, I just wanted to share this beautiful quote by Aristotle that says, educating the mind without educating the heart is not education at all. So this is very aligned with all the content that we saw today, and that we will continue diving in on how to educate our heart, our emotions, and our character for the benefit and flourishing of us and of all children and family in general. So thank you very much. And for example, for the mood meter, Valda, you can just search it in the web, the mood meter. There's even a mood meter app that you can also download. So yeah, you will find it very easily in the mood meter. Also, I will share with you in the answers, because there's the mood meter is part of a program that it's called Ruler. So Ruler, you can also look for it, and you will find some other resources that are very helpful. Okay. So thank you all. We finish our time, but we will continue working together. And I hope to see some of you, if you need it, in the next workshop for catching up, and otherwise in the next webinar. Thank you so much for all your responses, for the interactions. I feel very grateful for this. So thank you and goodbye.